and distinguished guests. On behalf of Rupa Publications India, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to each one of you on the book discussion of The Great Bank Robbery, MPA's Scam and the Future of Regulation by V. Pataki Ram and Sabyasachi Dash. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to the chief guest of the evening, Shri Harivansh ji, Honorable Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha, Shri Sujeet Kumar, Honorable Member of the Parliament Rajya Sabha, Dr. Amar Patnaik, Honorable Member of the Parliament Rajya Sabha, Guest of Honor, Dr. Surjit Bhalla, former Executive Director for India at IMF and former member EACPM, Dr. Ashwani Mahajan, Economist and National Co-Convenor SJM, Dr. Sharad Kohli, Economist, Shri Mukesh Butani, Managing Partner, PMR Legal and former Chairman, PMR Advisor, and Mr. Anlesh Mahajan, Deputy Editor, India Today, who will be moderating the discussion later and taking this evening forward. Now, I would like to request Shri Sabyasachi Dash to felicitate the guest, Shri Harivansh ji. May we please have a big round of applause. Mr. Dash to felicitate Shri Sujeet Kumar. Mr. Dash to felicitate Dr. Patnaik. I'd like to request Shri Satyaprabha Dash to felicitate Dr. Bhalla. Rajesh Sharma to felicitate Dr. Mahajan. Mr. Sabyasachi Dash to felicitate Dr. Sujeet Kumar. Shri Rajesh Sharma to felicitate Dr. Mahajan. Mr. Sabyasachi Dash to felicitate Dr. Mahajan. Dr. Paranjita Dash to facilitate Dr. Kohli, Dr. Sangamitra Dash to felicitate Shri Mukesh Butani, and Professor G.P. Dubey to felicitate Mr. Anlesh Mahajan. Like to invite Ms. Yamini Chaudhary, Executive Editor of Rupa Publications India, for the publisher's address to the dais.
Thank you, Priyanshi. Shri Harivansh Ji, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Rajya Sabha, Dr. Sujeet Bhalla, Dr. Ashwani Mahajan, Dr. Sharad Kohli, Mr. Mukesh Butani, our author, Mr. Sabyasachi Das, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, on behalf of Rupa Publications, I extend a very warm welcome to each one of you to this magnificent hall for the book discussion on the Great Bank Robbery, NPA Scams and the Future of Regulation by V. Pattabhiram and Mr. Sabyasachi Das. The journey of this book, ladies and gentlemen, began 3 years ago in December 2020. I read a very insightful article which Mr. Dash had written in The Statesman, and it was about the NPA's mess in India. I was very fascinated by what he'd written, and I immediately reached out to him to write a book on this subject. And to my utter delight, he agreed almost immediately. Thank you, sir, thank you for that. When the book finally reached me, there were a couple of things that stood out, which I'd like to share with all of you. The first is that it was able to capture the basic functioning of public sector banks in India in a very easy conversational manner. The the narrative of the book was very innovative. You had a great grandfather in conversation with his these two teenagers who are his grandchildren, and he talks to them about and gives them serious information about banking and about NPAs. It's a very engaging conversation, but the manner in which the narrative flows makes it very easily accessible to the general public. There are 11 scams that have been discussed in this book. These scams, they rock the stock market and as a result rock the nation. You have a Harshad Mehta, but you also have a Mehul Choksi, you have a Nirav Modi, and of course, Vijay Mallya. Without really sensationalizing the very dramatic content, it examines how the fraud really took place, how the scamsters, what were the strategies that they devised, how did they take advantage of the loopholes in the system, and what were the consequences. It also discusses the role of different stakeholders, for instance, the auditors, the rating agencies, you have company boards, the regulator, etc. I feel this is a very engaging and timely discussion, which is directed to you and me, the common citizen, who has no control over these scams, but we are still impacted by it. So ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know the working of our banking system, the functioning of our banking system, this is your go-to book. I would all urge you to grab your copy today. So without any further ado, I think we should begin our proceedings. I'm sure we will gain very fascinating insights from our esteemed panelists on this subject today. Congratulations to both our authors, and congratulations to Mr. Das for organizing this wonderful book discussion. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Now we would like to request the author Sabyasachi Das to be felicitated. Can we please have a big round of applause for the author? As we proceed further, I would like to invite our chief guest of the evening, Shri Harivansh ji, to share a few words with us.
हमारे राज्य सभा के दो अत्यंत डिस्टिंग्विश्ड हमारे सांसद मौजूद हैं, डॉक्टर अमर पटनायक जी। वस्तुतः इस विषय पर तो बात करने का उन्हीं को अधिकार है, ही इज एक्सपर्ट ऑफ दैट। इक्वली हमारे माननीय सुजीत जी, उनका जो अध्ययन है, उनका जो नॉलेज है, ही इज द बेस्ट पर्सन टू टॉक ऑन दिस। और सबसे अधिक जिन्हें मैं बहुत वर्षों से फ्रॉम डिकेड्स आई हैव बीन रीडिंग एज ए ग्रेट इकोनॉमिस्ट, मुझे मिलने का आज पहला मौका है। हमारे डॉक्टर सुजीत भल्ला जी, पीएम इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजरी काउंसिल के पूर्व सदस्य, स्वदेशी जागरण मंच के को-कन्वेनर और इकोनॉमिस्ट डॉक्टर अश्वनी महाजन जी, इकोनॉमिस्ट डॉक्टर शरद कोहली जी, बीआरएम लीगल के मैनेजिंग पार्टनर श्री मुकेश बुटानी जी, और आज यहाँ मौजूद सभी हमारे युवा खास तौर से और सभी सजग मित्रों, सबसे पहले हम लोग सव्यसाची दास जी को बहुत बधाई दें ये बहुत सुंदर पुस्तक लिखने के लिए। और ये पुस्तक कैसे हम सबके जीवन से संबंधित है, हम में से एक एक आदमी के भविष्य और उनके जीवन की एक एक चीजों को प्रभावित करती है, उसे हमें जानना चाहिए। बहुत रोचक शैली में लिखा गया जैसा आपने सुना। पर यह पुस्तक कुछ दिनों पहले मेरे प्रिय डॉक्टर देवाशीष पंडा जी ने मुझे दी। मैं थोड़ा पढ़ा, बहुत ही रोचक शैली में, द ग्रेट बैंक रॉबरी, एनपीएस स्कैम्स एंड द फ्यूचर ऑफ रेगुलेशन। ये कम से कम आने वाले जनरेशंस को अवेयर करेगी, उन्हें कॉन्शियस बनाएगी कि कैसे हम अपने समाज को, अपनी व्यवस्था को, गवर्नेंस को, फाइनेंशियल इकोनॉमिक की सिचुएशन को बेहतर तरीके से मॉनिटर कर सके, उस पर नजर रख सके। मैं कहना चाहूंगा, तो मैंने कहा कि अमर पटनायक जी और हमारे सुजीत जी और डॉक्टर सुजीत भल्ला जी और जो इकोनॉमिस्ट मौजूद है, दे आर द अथॉरिटी टू टॉक ऑन दिस। मेरी प्रेस बोली जर्नलिस्ट की रही, और जब मैं जर्नलिज्म में पहले दिन टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया ग्रुप मुंबई में ट्रेनिंग जर्नलिस्ट बनकर गया, तो हमारे साथ कुछ अंग्रेजी कुछ हिंदी के लोग थे, 15 लोगों की टीम होती थी, ग्रुप होता था हर साल सिलेक्शन। तो उसके फर्स्ट डे की रिसोर्स पर्सन हमारे पुष्पन सिंह थे, तब वो इलस्ट्रेटेड वीकली के एडिटर हुआ करते थे। तो उन्होंने कहा जर्नलिस्ट मीन्स, इन हिज फर्स्ट एड्रेस, जर्नलिस्ट मीन्स जर्नलिस्ट हु नोज एवरीथिंग, थोड़ा बहुत सामान्य। सो आई विल बी टॉकिंग फ्रॉम दैट एंगल ओनली। जैसा आपने सुना कि इस पुस्तक की शुरुआत कैसे एनपीए कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जो उन्होंने सीरीज लिखना शुरू किया उससे हुई, और इतनी रोचक ढंग से इन्होंने लिखी कि उसको पुस्तक का रूप मिला। तो इन दोनों लोगों को, इन्हें और वी पट्टाभिराम जी का सहयोग उसमें मिला। दोनों चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स हैं और यही इस विषय पर अच्छी तरह बात कर सकते हैं। तो सर मैं कैसे इस विषय को समझा एज ए लेमैन, जो मैं आपसे कह रहा था कि एज ए जर्नलिस्ट। पटनायक साहब और जी मैं पढ़ता रहता था, तो मैं बहुत वर्षों बाद आपके तलवार का एक क्वेश्चन पढ़ा, और खासतौर से हमारे बच्चे मौजूद हैं, दे मस्ट नो, क्योंकि आज हम ऐसे आइकॉन्स को देश में भूल रहे हैं। आरके तलवार हैपेंड टू बी द फर्स्ट, आई थिंक, चेयरमैन ऑफ स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया, जिनकी परवरिश इंडियन थिंकिंग में सारी चीजों में हुई। लाहौर में उनका जन्म हुआ, और स्टेट बैंक के जो मैनुअल्स वगैरह बने हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें, he was the man who was behind drafting all those things. He was a great banker. इमरजेंसी में वो इस देश के स्टेट बैंक के चेयरमैन, और उनके बारे में ये सब प्रसंग लिखा किसने है? इस दौर के, जिन्हें आप वन ऑफ द ग्रेटेस्ट बैंकर मान सकते हैं, एन बाकुल ने। एन बाकुल हैज रिटन अबाउट हिम, वो मैंने बहुत पहले पढ़ा, जो हमारे भल्ला साहब और को ज्यादा उसकी जानकारी। एन बाकुल हैपेंड टू हिज असिस्टेंट विद ऑफिसर। किस रूप में उन्हें इमरजेंसी में हटाया गया? ये सारा प्रकरण जो बैंक रॉबरी और ये सारी चीजें जो सुन रहे हैं, दैट स्टार्टेड फ्रॉम देयर। बड़ी वजह मैं मानता हूं कि किस तरह से इसकी शुरुआत होती है, और हमारे बच्चों को खास तौर से जानना चाहिए। उन्हें इमरजेंसी में दबाव आया टॉप से, दिल्ली से, कि भाई दिल्ली में फाइनेंस से बड़ी पार्टी का मैं कोई नाम नहीं लेना चाहता हूँ, चीजों को मैं संदर्भ के रूप इस घटना को डायरेक्ट कर रहा हूँ, कि इनकी यूनिट सिक हो गई है, इसको आप रीफाइनेंस करने के लिए सोचें। तो कहा ठीक है, फेयर इनफ। उन्होंने अपने दिल्ली के उस अधिकारी को, जो उस ब्रांच का इंचार्ज था, कहा कि आप इसको रिविजिट करिए और क्या फाइनेंस कर सकते हैं, वो यूनिट सिक हो गई है, पहले से फाइनेंस किया हुआ है, बट कैन बी डन, यू सी। उसकी पूरी स्टडी उन लोगों ने की, उनके अधिकारियों ने उनको रिपोर्ट बैक किया, कि दिस स्कीम इज नॉट वायबल, इनको फाइनेंस नहीं किया जा सकता। एंड ही हैड डायरेक्ट टेलीफोन फ्रॉम फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर। तो उन्होंने कहा, जब उसे दोबारा पूछा गया क्यों नहीं आप इससे फाइनेंस कर पा रहे, कहा कि ये प्रॉब्लम है, हमारे बैंकर्स कह रहे हैं, हमारे अधिकारी कह रहे हैं, इट्स नॉट वायबल, यू नॉट बी डूइंग इट। हमारा स्टैंड यही है, दबाव का कि नहीं, दे वांट इट टू बी फाइनेंस। फिर कहा कि ठीक है, हम फाइनेंस भी करने पर विचार करते हैं, इसके बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स में चेंज करेंगे, ओनर वो नहीं रहेंगे, कोई और रहेगा। मैं अपनी मेमोरी का आधार पे आपसे शेयर कर सकता हूँ, फैक्ट्स कुछ इधर उधर हो सकते हैं, पर ब्रॉडर इशू ये was called कि आप देश के एक सबसे बड़े आदमी जिनकी अथॉरिटी थी उस वक्त, कोई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल पोस्ट पर नहीं थे, लोग जानते होंगे, क्या आप उनसे मिलते हैं? रिफ्यूज। क्या कि मैं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल पोस्ट पर बैठे व्यक्ति से मिल सकता हूं? सी द करेज ऑफ दैट मैन। मना कर दिया। लॉन्ग स्टोरी इज देयर। स्टेट बैंक के कानून में कोई वो नहीं था, प्रोविजन नहीं था उनको हटाने का। कैसे एक्ट बदला गया, किस तरह से उन्हें ऑफर किए गए पोस्ट वगैरह की दूसरे बैंकों के चेयरमैन बन जाएगी, हर सब बहुत उनको ऑल्टरनेट अवसर दिया गया कि वो खुद हट जाए। फिर उनके खिलाफ पता किया गया कि कैसे उन्हें परेशान किया जा सकता है। नथिंग वाज फाउंड अगेंस्ट हिम। लंबा किस्सा वाज रिवोक्ड इन बाबुल है इट वेरी, मतलब आप कभी पढ़े व्यवहार कैसे उन्हें हटाया गया, क्या क्या हुआ। वो सीधे चले गए पौंडीचेरी, हस्बैंड वाइफ वहां रहने लगे, वहां खेती वगैरह करने लगे। और बाद के दिनों में जब जनता पार्टी की सरकार सत्ता में आई, ही वाज ऑफर्ड रिजर्व बैंक में दो बैंक के चेयरमैन से, वो फिर वापस नहीं आए, वो रह गए। मूल मुद्दा ये था कि डिक्लाइन के ऊपर से जो भी चीजें कही जाती हैं, अगर वायबल नहीं है तो हम फाइनेंस नहीं करेंगे। ये जस्ट दैट गट्स। फिर उनकी मेमोइर्स को आप पढ़ें, वो इंटरव्यू मैंने एक बार कोलकाता आया है, मैं मुझे अवसर मिला जाकर 15 दिन एक वहाँ मैनेजमेंट सेंटर फॉर ह्यूमन वैल्यूज होता था, उसमें पढ़ने का 15 दिन का एक कोर्स करने का। तो वहाँ वो आए थे, उसका उन्होंने अपना पूरा इंटरव्यू दिया था बैंकिंग सिस्टम के बारे में, किस तरह से यूनियंस डिक्टेट करती हैं, किस तरह से प्रेशर्स आते हैं। आपकी तलवार को जाना केस स्टडी है। फिर उन्होंने कहा कि आप दोबारा जब अवसर मिला तो क्यों नहीं? मेरे उस सिस्टम में इंटरेस्ट कम हो गया और बात लोग कहते थे मेरे जीवन की ताकत थी। लोगों ने पूछा कि कैसे आप कहते हैं? मैं गीता रोज पढ़ता हूँ, मेरी माँ ने यही मेरी शिक्षा दी थी, मैं लाहौर में पैदा हुआ। और बड़ा इट्स वेरी इंस्पायरिंग स्टोरी ऑफ ए मैन जो सारे प्लेसेस में खड़ा हो सके। मेरे समझ में ये बार बार चीजें नहीं आती कि हमारे ऑडिटर्स इतने ज्ञान हुआ, हमारे चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स इतने ज्ञान हुआ, फिर ये चीजें होती क्यों है? ये गांव के अपर लोग नहीं करते। मुझे याद है, मैं गांव से हूं, मैं जयप्रकाश जी के गांव से हूं, जो देश के बड़े नेताओं में हुई, आज की नई पीढ़ी ने कम जानेगी, जहां कोई एक 10-20 हजार आदमी में क्लास इंटर पढ़ लेता था, उस तरह के गांव से। पर वहां भी एक अपर आदमी अगर वो डेथ बेड पर होता था तो ये कहता था अपने सक्सेसर को बुला करके कि मेरा इस आदमी से मैंने इतने पैसे लिए थे, उसको लौटा देना। That was kind of value जो हमने मिस किया। उस तरह के वैल्यूज इन बाबुल जैसे लोग रखते थे। मैं खुद आपसे कहता हूँ, मैं किफिशन की यात्रा करता था, मुझे लगता था इतना वैल्यूज सुविधा कौन दे सकता है साहब? ये इकोनॉमी टिकट में उस तरह से स्वागत, ये तो कंपनी डूबनी ही है। फिर जब हम सांसद बन करके आए तो हमारी यंग जनरेशन को जाना चाहिए कि आप सबका पैसा है जो जाता है, ये हम सबका पैसा है टैक्स का जो जाता है। हम अनअवेयर है इसलिए जाता है। ये किताब बहुत काम करेगी हमें अवेयर बनाने में। विजय माल्या सांसद और वो गिफ्ट्स तो भेज देते सारे, इसको बड़े चर्चा का विषय होता। तो जब मैं आया तो गिफ्ट आया तो मैंने कहा मैं तुम्हें जानता नहीं भाई, ये कैसे आप वापस बहुत सारे रेफरेंस करते थे, मैं किसी के बारे में नहीं कह रहा हूं। पर एक आदमी इतनी महंगी गिफ्ट्स सारे लोगों को कहां से दे सकता है? वो अपने चार्टर्ड फ्लाइट से लोगों को अफ्रीका में फिल्म दिखाने के लिए कहां से क्रिकेट दिखाने के लिए ले जा सकता है? उसकी पार्टियां होती थी उनके ग्रुप की साल में एक बार, जिसमें जाने के लिए देश के एलिट वर्ग हमारे सारे लोग कैलेंडर शब्द है। हमारे पुरखों ने तो ये सिखाया कि जितनी आमद उतने में आप रहे तब स्वाभिमान से जी सकते हैं। हमारे देश में क्रेडिट कार्ड की जो कमेटी पहले बनी थी कि क्रेडिट कार्ड इंट्रोड्यूस किया जाए या नहीं, उसमें भी मिस्टर के तलवार सदस्य और क्रेडिट कार्ड्स को लेकर जो कुछ भी दुनिया के दूसरे देशों में हुआ, खासतौर से ब्रिटेन में संसदीय कमेटी ने अध्ययन किया, उसके क्या दुष्प्रभाव हुए, ये न कुछ कंज्यूमरिज्म ने दुनिया में इतना नाश किया है। मैं कुछ दिनों पहले किताब में इनकी पढ़ रहा था, लगभग 800 पेज की है और 2 इकोनॉमिस्टों ने मिलकर लिखा है कंज्यूमरिज्म का हिस्ट्री। हमने गांधी को बुलाया, ये सब सारी चीजें करनी शुरू की, आवश्यकता से अधिक खर्च करना शुरू किया, ये सारी सिचुएशंस की ओरिजिन वो है। इसलिए ये हर्षद मेहता, कीर्तन पारिक, मेहुल चौकसी, ये पार्टी जिनका मैंने नाम लिया, ये सब चीजों की देर है जो आज हमने किया। इसलिए मैं बधाई देना चाहूंगा कि आपने ये बहुत अच्छी पुस्तक लिखी है और बहुत ही मतलब बातचीत की शैली में है, फिक्शन और करंट इवेंट्स को मिला करके बहुत ही सिंबॉलिकली आपने एक जैसा आपने सुना कि बातचीत और संवाद की शैली में लिखा। दूसरा मैं इसका जब 2018 में हमारे यहाँ इस सरकार के खिलाफ अविश्वास प्रस्ताव आया तो मैं भी लोकसभा की गैलरी में जाकर बैठा था, सुन रहा था। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने एक बड़ी महत्वपूर्ण बात कही, तब मुझे दोबारा आके तलवार याद आए। कहा कि 2009 से 2014 के बीच बैंकों में अंडरग्राउंड लूट कैसे चल रही। आजादी के 60 वर्षों के बाद हमारे देश के बैंकों ने लोन के रूप में, मैं अपने भाव में कर रहा हूं, नॉट एग्जैक्टली कोटिंग में, लोन के रूप में जो धनराशि दी थी वो 18 लाख करोड़ रुपए, यानी 60 वर्ष में जो फाइनेंसिंग हुई थी वो 18 लाख करोड़। 2008 से 14 के बीच 6 साल में यह राशि 18 लाख करोड़ से 52 लाख करोड़ हो गई। 60 वर्षों में जो हुआ था सिर्फ 6 वर्षों में हो गया। आई डोंट वांट टू गो इन डिटेल्स, फोन बैंकिंग कैसे होती थी, बैंक के चेयरमैन कैसे पहुंचते, वी नो द पब्लिक। मैं तो सब्यसाची जी से आग्रह करूंगा ये फैक्ट्स भी, कभी हिस्टोरिकल फैक्ट्स भी जो चीजें हुई है उसको एक बुक के रूप में लाइए ना, पीपल शुड नो कि हमारे देश में किस तरह की चीजें हुई है जिससे बैंक टूटने लगे और आज बैंक मुनाफे में आए, क्योंकि आपके यहाँ बहुत सारे कानून, मुझे याद है इन कानूनों के बारे में हमारे एक्सपर्ट्स लोगों को बताएंगे। संसद में हम लोग हिस्सा थे जब इंसॉल्वेंसी बैंक्रप्सी कोड कानून बना, जो पश्चिमी मीडिया हमें इतना गाली देता है, इकोनॉमिस्ट ने इसकी प्रशंसा की कानून की, ये बहुत पहले बन जाना चाहिए। ये सारी चीज अगर पहले हुई होती तो शायद देश का इतना पैसा इस रूप में और जनता के कर का पैसा इसका दुरुपयोग नहीं होता। मैं और बहुत सारे पॉइंट्स है लेकिन मैं बहुत कुछ कहे बगैर एक चीज ये कहूंगा, विवेक देवराय जी ने बहुत सुंदर ढंग से इसकी भूमिका लिखी, इट्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। मैं जस्ट कोट 2-4 लाइन करके करूंगा। In 69 there was a film titled The Great Bank Robbery, where robbers seek to steal gold from a bank's vault in Texas. A preacher is thief. The robbery is scheduled to take place during 4th of July celebrations. Evidence of a banker's corruption is also hidden in the vault, and lady protagonist writes new, like Lady Godiva, to cause distraction. We, Bhattavi Ram and Sabyasachi Das may not have intended any allusion to the film, but this book on NPA, The Scams and Future of Regulation, has parallels with that film. For a start, there has been a handful of books on banks, scams and NPA, but none that begins in such a striking and fictionalized way. तो बहुत धन्यवाद आपको आपकी किताब के लिए। और इसमें बहुत अच्छा हुआ 2-3 चीज और कहते हैं। आई नो सुजीत जी को जाना है 7 बजे, इसलिए मैं वो सब कोट कहे बगैर वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग, यू रीड इट। ये आपके फ्यूचर से कंसर्न है, अपने फ्यूचर को, समाज को हम बेहतर रखना चाहते हैं तो वी मस्ट नो इट, इसे सीख करके हमें समाज पर कैसे गौर रखें, ध्यान रखें और इंटरवेन करें। दैट इज द लेसन ऑफ दिस बुक। थैंक यू।
Thank you so your insightful words, Harivansh. Now, I would like to request Shri Sujeet Kumar to share a few words with us. Alright, there's a slight change. Now we would like to request our chief guest of the evening, Shri Harivansh Ji, Shri Sujeet Kumar, Honorable Member of the Parliament, Dr. Amar Patnaik, Honorable Member of the Parliament, Guest of Honor, Dr. Surjit Bhalla, Dr. Ashwani Mahajan, Economist and National Co-Convenor, Dr. Sharad Kohli, Shri Mukesh, Butani, and Yamini Chaudhary to come on stage and release the book. May I request everybody that I've named to be present on stage to release the book. Now we would like to present a short video based on the book with all of you. May I now request Shri Sujeet Kumar to share a few words with us.
Shri Harivansh Ji, it's such an honor always to be on the panel with you. And I have a distinct honor of being on the panel with him twice in a week's time. So he has been such a great supporter and mentor and guide to all of us in Rajya Sabha. Dr. Bhalla, Dr. Amar Patnaik, who is also a fellow member of Parliament from the same state and from the same party. Author, Dr. Sabha Das, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly young minds present here. Good evening, namaskar. I am reminded today of an anecdote or a quote or a funny quote rather. People say that if you owe a bank a few lakhs of rupees, then you have sleepless nights as to how to repay back. But if you owe the bank if you 100 crores, then not you, the bank will have sleepless nights as to how to recover. Thank you, Dr. Das, for inviting me. So, Mr. Das, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here at this book launch, and I apologize to all of you that I will have to leave midway, but I would like to catch. And let me compliment you and extend my profuse congratulations to you for writing a book. I've been trying to write a book for the last 4 years without any success. I know how tough it is to be an author, to write a book. It calls for a lot of dedication, research, and a lot of hard work, which I guess I need to develop. This book, I think, is very timely, rather long overdue, I would say, because we have had scams in this country from the 50s onward, banking scams, starting from Muda scam, all the way to Harshad Mehta, KB, Chetan Paji, Vijay Mallya was referred to by Ashwani, yes, bank scam, and so on and so forth. So I think it is necessary as citizens, as common citizens of this country, to understand why these scams occur, how can we mitigate the possibilities of having scams in the future. Banking is something which affects every common citizen of this country, whether it is someone sitting in Delhi, a top corporate honcho, or a travel lady somewhere in Kalandi or Purapur district of Odisha. Now everyone has a Jan account. At least that is the connection to banks and the banking sector for every common citizen of this country. Now, though we have a connection to bank and the banking sector, it's a very arcane sector for most of us. It has its own jargons, it has its own ways of working. Most of us do not understand how a bank operates. We understand simple deposit and credit. But beyond that, I think most of us do not understand the details of the banking industry. But the financial or the economic health of our country, or for that matter, any country, is largely depending on the health of the banking sector. And if the banking sector collapses, as has happened, or the financial sector for that matter, whether it's bank or insurance or NBFCs, if it collapses, then it can also lead to the fall or the ruin of that country. It has happened. Civilizations have failed because of the fall of the financial sector. So it's very necessary for us, it's very imperative for all of us to understand this landscape, why it happens, what are the loopholes, because scamsters and fraudsters, they exploit the loopholes. They don't operate in vacuum. They do understand that there are certain loopholes in the regulatory mechanism which they try to exploit. And we need to be cognizant of that. We need to understand what those loopholes are, how we can plug them, so that we don't repeat. Because there's a quote which says, if you don't learn from history, then you are doomed to repeat it. So this is why I think this book is a great addition to the collective wisdom of our country. And I think it will help, as I said, the common citizen, because at the end of the day, it's the common citizen of India, common citizen of our country, who are the victims. The biggest can go scot-free, the biggest have the wherewithal to have the most expensive of lawyers and to sometimes flee to different locations. But imagine someone who has deposited 10,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees. It might be the life saving for her. And if she loses that, of course we have guarantee up to 1 lakh rupees and so on. But if the life saving of a person, many people in various states have fallen victim to cheat fund scams. That's because of poor financial literacy. So I think this book will be a great addition to the financial and banking wisdom. And I would urge everyone, all the stakeholders, to read this book. It would be a great reading. I have not myself read this book. In fact, I just saw this book right here for the first time. But I think I'm very much looking forward to reading it in the flight and thereafter. But I would strongly urge everyone, all the stakeholders, to read this book. And my compliments and congratulations again, Mr. Das. I hope you will continue writing, and I hope you will continue enlightening all of us.
for your encouraging words, Shri Sujeet. Please give us some time as we settle down to proceed further. I would like to request Dr. Amar Patnaik to share his thoughts with us.
Honorable Chairman, Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, Shri Harivansh. There are several distinguished guest economists, with some of whom I've been on television, like Dr. Sharad. I have read, of course, Dr. Sujeet Bhalla and have quoted him extensively while writing about institutional change in my first book on institutional change and power. Dr. Mahajan and other distinguished speakers, the author, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I was very happy to see the book because in my previous role as a CAG auditor, I had the good fortune or misfortune of investigating or auditing rather some of the biggest scams, including from in Australia, the Bihar water scam. My first scam audit was the Bihar water scam, and that I did in 1996, just when I was a deputy accountant general. I was posted in Calcutta, and I was summoned to now Jharkhand, so it was Ranchi and Patna, because too many people were involved in this. As they say, there was a corruption coalition. Subsequently, I also audited the letter of credit scam in Assam. And then fortunately, even though the CAG's ambit, CAG's audit mandate, doesn't extend to commercial banks, it is scheduled commercial banks, I had the good fortune of being appointed as the Auditor General of Cooperative Societies in Orissa. So cooperative banks, where you know the internal control mechanisms are not very great even now, both the central cooperative banks who dispense loans to farmers and the urban cooperative banks which have now come under the regulation of the RBI, which were not visible there when I was the Auditor General. So there also I have seen the first exposure to the banking sector's audit and the scams that happen in that sector. And then now, as a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance, we regularly look at the bank's balance sheets, all banks, including the regulators' views, the RBI's views on the bank's performance, and the NPAs that have stopped us for a long period of time. So I was very happy that this book was something which I have been doing all my life, first as a civil servant and now as a member of Parliament in the Standing Committee on Finance. So the last chapter, of course, you know, I completely agree with Dr. Vivek Devroy. The book has been written in a very, very friendly way, readable way for a common man, and that's, I think, the hallmark of this book. If I use technical words like gross NPA and net NPA as a percentage of the net demand liabilities, then I think, you know, just people will just switch off. So I think that way this is a great contribution to the body of literature on financial sector. I compliment you also for it. I was drawn to, while I was just quickly going through it, I just got a copy of the book about an hour ago, I was just quickly going through it. So I saw this part 3, which talks about sleeping at the wheel and where were the auditors. So I was very, because for 28 years I was an auditor, auditing different kind of systems, including, of course, as I said, banks. So I was drawn to page number 160, and it talks about every fraud has gone through an audit. Every fraud has gone through an audit. How true it is. All the frauds, whether it is in the public sector, government sector, I talked about the Bihar Protestant, these are treasury-oriented scams. Or the financial sector, which is the direct lending by the financial sector, it has gone through an audit process. I will bring a little bit of technicality here, which I keep asking all banks which come before us. How strong is your internal audit system? Audit is of two kinds. There's an external audit, there's an internal audit. The external auditor comes after the internal auditor. In the case of banks, after seeing the series of banking malfeasances, I would say, by the board of directors, so the Reserve Bank of India as a regulator has come out with three sets of auditors. There are concurrent auditors, there are statutory auditors, there are internal auditors, a lot of auditors. But how does this happen? Every fraud has gone through an audit. And no auditor will tell you that it is an auditor's failure. The auditor, due respect to all chartered accountants here, because they prepare these statements, they would say that as long as the reflection in the financial statements is as per the accounting standards, our role is over. Our role is not to detect fraud, right? Every CA says that. So when we brought this change, when we brought a change in the Institute of Chartered Accountants Act recently, and brought all the three, ICI, the Institute of Cost Management Accountants, and the Cost Accountants and Management Accountants, we said that they have to be more rigorous, they have to exercise more due diligence. And in the Act itself, now there are elements of external evaluation of an audit process, including appointment of auditors. Actually, the governance of the entire, my view, that why this happens is the governance of the internal governance, the overall governance of the financial system, including the banks, was very lax. Probably continues to be lax in some areas where there is a vacuum, there is a regulatory vacuum. The internal controls, which are responsibility of the internal, which are completely the responsibility of the management, and the internal auditors, including the the audit board at the directors level. The first alert actually has to come from them and not from the external auditors. Most often, we refer to audit failure as an external audit failure. I'm trying to bring in this difference because I do not know whether in your narration you have taken this into account. In most cases, this has not happened. I remember looking at the Satyam fraud. It was a simple due diligence of taking the bank statement and then starting the audit, which the article clubbed as a Chartered Accountants Office's fraud. That you first take the payments and then you look at your cash flow to see whether all payments are reflected or not. So in the Satyam case, a simple exercise is whether the fixed deposits that are shown to be there in the bank's account and financial statements are being prepared on the basis of that, and huge profits are being shown and therefore dividends are being distributed. The exercise of just confirming those balances from the banks was not done, which is the Chartered Accountant Article Club is supposed to do. So this is where I completely agree with Deputy Chairman when he said, Mansa kya hai? Unless the value system changes, unless people change, unless there is a change in our systems, if the regulator, if the auditor, if the executive, if the controller, everyone who collaborates to carry out a scam, nobody really can help until it is detected and then the further course of action is taken in terms of criminal action. So there are three elements here. One is the preventive part. The preventive part is when you say about internal control mechanisms, you talk about all these, audits, you talk about inspections, you talk about better NPA, adherence to the prudential norms. This is the preventive part. The second part is the detective part, how quickly you can detect a fraud. Now this is where I think we have to, I say with a lot of responsibility as a member of the Parliament, the Standing Committee on Finance, because we keep on interacting with all the banks in the country, both scheduled and private banks as well, and the RBI from time to time. That the detection part has to be more robust. And this can only happen by adoption of technology. The adoption of technology in the banking sector in India, though started late, has been galloping, it's been very robust, it continues to get robust. But when I ask this question, we have about 600 crores of cyber frauds every year. We did a parliamentary report in our standing committee on cyber security and cyber fraud. Now, 600 crores as a percentage of about $12.5 trillion rupees of UPI payments is a very minuscule percentage, and we have checked that it is one of the best in the world, I think. Not much. But in gross terms, it is about 600 crores. 600 crores is not a small amount. So the question that how quickly you can detect a fraud and report and take, reformative action is important. So as much as prevention is important to stop a fraud from happening, the detection and consequential changes required to reform the process are equally important. In the process of the second stage, the reforms, we have the IBC, insolvency. By the way, I'll just give you some amount of information here. The insolvency and bankruptcy code, it's not a recovery mechanism. It is not a recovery, it is to make a company continue to be there. It's a going on concern. But initially, people used it as a recovery. Most of the banks used it as a recovery system to cleanse the balance sheet, and therefore we have the best balance sheet in the banking sector. The gross NPAs have reduced to about 3.9%, and the net NPAs are about 1% as per the RBI Financial Stability Report 2023. They have used IBC, they have used recovery tribunals, they have used asset reconstruction companies. But what we are seeing that the IBC mechanism, which initially used to give a recovery of about 35%, and therefore it was better than the rest of the methods of recovery, has now surfaced and all that. Now has come down to about 13 to 14% as reported. So, despite regulatory mechanisms which are mostly coercive, what is required is that we as a people, we as a group of people, have to improve our value system. I completely agree with Dr. Harivansh on this particular. We have to be responsible ourselves that we have a stake. Why do these things happen? Because we think that we do not have a stake in this financial system. We think that someone else is running it and we are getting credit from it. And we may not be. This false notion or this misguided notion is what is at the heart of most of the scams that is happening in any sector. And when we bring in regulation, I remember when prudential norms were not required to be followed in the cooperative sector in the 1999-2000 period. And when as Auditor General, I tried to enforce some kind of a prudential norm past due 90 days. I think I was using 180 days at that time, as the RBI guidelines at that time. We had people, directors of these cooperative banks complaining to the Chief Minister saying that by grading, by writing all these things, who will come to the cooperative sector? Now this is the mindset. That if you speak truth, then you will lose your clients. So this chicken and egg story will also come at some point of time. But we are failing to understand that the purpose of any regulation is to build trust in the system. Trust is at the core of regulation. If you, for every failed transaction for every scam that occurs, several times more number of people lose trust on that particular bank or that particular system. As they say, it's very difficult to build trust and very easy to lose it. We say it in life. And this is why I like this book, that it talks about NPA scams and the future of regulation. I have not read the book because I just went glance through it right now. But this is where I think I really would recommend it to Mr. Sujeet Das, that the future of any sector, including the banking sector, would depend on how good are regulations. And the problem with regulations is there could be over-regulation, there could be under-regulation. Over-regulation leads to killing innovation. Under-regulation leads to scams. To arrive at this particular balance is the key policy issue that policy planners and policy implementers, executive, legislature, judiciary have to decide at some point of time. There is no fixed point to say that this is the balance, even for the judiciary. Episodic instances, these scams are not happening almost every day. These episodic instances kill trust, affects the entire system. And then the system reacts by not letting credit flow happen. You are talking about 18 lakh crore. If you look at the credit gap in the MSME sector in our country, and I keep asking to our banks, that in how many years you will be able to meet this gap? There is still a gap of about 25 lakh crores in the MSME sector. Now, if you have scams, if people lose trust, the banks also refuse to lend. The entire economy suffers. I thought I would not have spoken about all this, but I nowadays, since I speak a lot on technology as well. Technology also has this problem. A lot of technology is being used in the banks, but the problem to detect a fraud very quickly and to ensure that the fraud doesn't replicate in, because it's a technology, you have networks, you have networks. Remember that bearing case in which used to just steal, I think $1.1 and he became, nobody noticed it, and at some point of time he had committed a big scam because he had paid that money. So the problem with technology is also that it travels so fast that unless there is a mechanism in which to detect a fraud very quickly and maybe refund the money to the person who is losing that money, or to prevent someone from drawing money illegally, which will impact the entire banking system, unless we travel in that direction, and the trajectory of our financial regulation should be to build trust so that innovations take place, but at the same time prevent frauds from taking place. The NPAs are not necessarily a reflection of fraud. Again, I'm very carefully stating this. All frauds results in probably NPAs, but all NPAs are not frauds. So we have to also look at NPAs in that particular lens. Unless that happens, the credit flow to the economy will not take place. I used to be an auditor, as I said, and I was on the other side. I used to think that all these people are not following rules and they're just making money. Everyone is probably a scamster in making or whatever. But after coming to seeing the banking sector, seeing the entire interaction with the banking sector, seeing the credit shortages for MSME, for startups, people who are going for not having money, NBFCs charging at a very high rate of interest, which will not be the internal rate of return from any business that you do. One realizes that credit flow also has to happen. And therefore the regulation, therefore the control over NPAs, therefore the need for recapitalization, that lends us to be used, and that is the, I think the crowd here is very esoteric, so I'm using such a technical language, but that is what we should be trying. So thank you so much for this wonderful book, Sachi, and of course your co-author, Mr. V. Bhattavi Ram. I would go through it sometimes later, but thank you so much for inviting me here, and thank you all for giving a patient hearing to what I said. Thank you so much.
The Honorable Deputy Chairman and Honorable MP have to leave, so we're slightly deviating from the order that we agreed originally, that we'll have a panel discussion. So I'm just taking the liberty of just thanking both the gentlemen around, and Mr. Sujeet Kumar has already left. I don't think I can thank them enough, sir. I mean, people of your stature, basically, I remember, Honorable Deputy Chairman, sir, the day you received this book, I was in Bombay, and you took the trouble of calling me out. So that was more exciting than this book being published. So it means a lot to me personally, sir, a person of your stature, and three of you, incidentally, just very quickly, with the permission of all three, I think all of us know in this room. So you all have embraced social service in form of politician much later in life. So you have been originally a journalist, and Dr. Patnaik has extensively referred to his auditing experience. So obviously he is a career auditor as a All India officer, CG department, and Mr. Sujeet Kumar himself has been the Chief Secretary rank officer in the state government, and he is an engineer turned lawyer. He has done courses from Oxford, Harvard, and Dr. Patnaik is Harvard educated gentleman. So, sir, you set the tone of this discussion, and you have dealt with in a very short time with your ability to sort of contextualize. I think you have almost covered all the intricacies, but at the same time being modest that you are not dealing with the nuanced aspect. So we're really thankful to you, and probably that is what the ability that you possessed over the long experience of not just in service, social service, even different sectors that you have been associated with, different role play that you have been. Obviously, this will be followed by the electrifying panel that we all are waiting for. I'm sure they all are inspired enough, even though they themselves are famous in their own rights. So we are really grateful to you, sir, for your time and the kind of patronage that you have extended. Really grateful, sir. Thank you so much.
give us some time as we settle down to proceed further with the panel discussion.